to kick it off, I guess we'll introduce ourselves. My name is Zach Tominelli. I am the Consumer Protection Advocate for the Vermont Public Interest Research Group, or VPIRG. You may be familiar with VPIRG or not. You probably, at the very least, at some point, if you've been living in Vermont long enough, had a VPIRG canvasser come to your door in the summer and talk to you about our campaigns and the various things that we've worked on. I think we maybe tend to be a little bit more known as an environmental organization. We work on obviously a lot of environmental work, but since our very, very beginning, we've also had a strong interest in consumer protection. This goes all the way back to one of our earliest campaigns was, trying to basically stop price gouging in the hearing aid industry and, protect consumers in that space. And that work's continued on and on, whether it's, labeling laws to, inform consumers, product safety laws. And as we've kind of moved here into the 21st century and beyond, a lot of our consumer protection work is focused on the online space because we are, as we will discuss very much tonight, living more and more of our lives. Commerce, retail, job applications, everything is happening online. And that's where we seek to protect consumers. And really at the heart of that, a lot, is consumer data. And we're going to talk quite a bit tonight probably about consumer data and how it moves around and how it's used and often how it is misused. And that really is the thrust of the work that VPIRG does, is to try to educate folks about potential threats that are there, particularly with the misuse of consumer data, how people can better protect themselves from things like scams, identity theft, and then ultimately advocate for policies that make the misuse of consumer data less likely not happening. So that's what brings us here tonight. I think that is probably enough by the way of an introduction. If you want to get to know me more personally, feel free to come up and we'll chat afterwards. And with that, I will turn it over to really the star of the show, Rep. Monique Priestly.
These are all the stars.
And she'll kind of let you know a little about herself and how we're going to run things tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Thank you so much for coming. So I am Representative Monique Priestly. I represent Bradford Fairleigh, West Fairleigh. This is my third year in the State House, second term. People ended up asking this later in the session, so I'm going to start off this time with a little bit more bio, which is my whole career has been in tech, starting from hardware and wiring my high school actually as a teenager, and then it led into hardware customer support and helping in computer labs, and then it went to database design and management, and then web development, and then software development, and so I've done a little bit of every type of role pretty much. And so at the same time, all of my free time over the years has been volunteering for nonprofits and things like that. So the marriage of the two of those in the legislature makes it fun to do, I really want to make sure that we're engaging the public in a lot of our issues. And in this case, really want to thank you for coming out. A little bit of what led us here was we've been trying to pass a consumer data privacy bill in the State House. And they're just like a lot of consumer protection issues. Generally, we're hearing from the big guys. We're hearing from the companies who we're going to interrupt their profit flow. So in that, we end up hearing from lobbyists, and we end up hearing from people who the lobbyists and the big corporations want us to hear from. And generally, a lot of just the average public doesn't realize. I certainly didn't realize. How accessible the State House is, that we need people's voices. We really need the public there. Otherwise, we don't generally hear from the public unless there's something really big, newsworthy, and people are angry. But generally, we always want the public voices involved. So I would just want to thank you for coming out and doing this. So as far as kind of the flow, like Zach said, really want this to be as much of a discussion as possible. I know just a few things that came up. This is our second round. We have 6 of them, then 12 of them, then maybe 20 of them. But so we're adjusting as we go. But so there's a few things that came up last time. I just want to flag as around privacy and big tech and tech in general and all of those things. There's topics that we could go on a million different rabbit holes, a million different tangents, and so we're really trying to focus on privacy, artificial intelligence, kind of related online, like how your data is used, social media. When it starts getting into more like hardware stuff, like radiation, radio frequency stuff. Super like appreciate people's involvement, but I can't go down. I don't know that area, so just like flagging early, I can't go down those rabbit holes with you. So, and what else? Oh, we have question cards. Like if people aren't comfortable at voicing a question, like please feel comfortable to like write questions down. Everybody's different as far as engagement goes. Generally I would say like
just
if
leave
you
this up here, and if you want to write something down, come grab it.
If you tend to be somebody who's like likes to talk a lot and engage, love that. Maybe like think about the rest of the crew if we need to make sure we're hearing from everybody. And if you don't tend to speak up, no pressure, but if you want to speak up, like please feel free to just be invited to engage with us because we'd love to hear from you. I think that's it for like all of the basics. Okay, great. What are we doing now? So now we're doing Who Are You?
Yes.
So we'll just go around. If you don't want to share who you are and a little bit of your background, just say pass, no problem, no pressure. Julie, can we start with you?
Sure. Hi everybody, my name's Julie Lowell. I actually live in South Burlington and came down to hang out with y'all down here.
Nice.
I work at an organization called Public Assets Institute, and we are a data research shop who kind of come at this from a slightly different angle, which is really how do we use our government to make sure that everybody can meet their basic needs. And so data privacy and protection is paramount to making sure that one, the government can collect really good state data on who's using services so that we can make sure that everybody who is eligible for services can access them. But the flip side of that is making sure that that data is protected. And I really became interested in this issue in the last 5 to 6 months when we started to see the federal government taking public data and using it in ways that were not what the data was intended for, specifically trying to find addresses for folks in our community to target them and detain them. And so that was when I became very involved and concerned that we're misusing our public data, and that's going to cause people not to access the public services that they're eligible for. Thanks for having me.
Tell me your first name again.
Julie.
I'm Abby Solomon. I live in Bethel. I work here in Randolph. I'm the program manager of Cultivator, which is a business support organization. Also, kind of with a view on innovation and tech in rural communities. We're not quite there yet, but we're moving towards there. And I'm actually very interested in this because I'm having more and more businesses come to me about marketing, having to market, having to use things online, but not wanting to like really use them because of the data issues. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
I'm Michael Penrod. I'm not a big internet user, beyond email and YouTube University and newspaper. My wife Sally is the one that's going to the internet than I am. So I'm here because she's here.
Great.
But it's a good way to get here, right?
Yeah, no, that's great.
I'm Sally Penrod. We live in Randolph. We are retired, so we're not your typical users. We don't do social media, none of it. I confess to using Google.
It's okay. There's no judgment.
I think our passwords are pretty protected. I set them up through Apple. No? Yes.
Just don't say them while we're being recorded.
Right. Don't say my passwords.
Yeah.
No. I'm here because I was curious
Yeah.
and terrified at the same time.
Yeah.
My name's Jessamine West, and I live up the road, and I work at this library, helping people use computers. I also have a little show I take on the road, which is like 5 basic steps to privacy, and so this is a topic that's interesting to me because I feel like I've got my finger on the pulse a little bit of like what people think they know about privacy and some of their concerns, ranging from exactly like EMF radiation all the way to how do I get my iCloud to talk to my Google Cloud kind of thing. And I think tech literacy is a really important part of tech privacy, and I think it's super challenging because Vermont in some ways prides itself on being super offline, and I think that's our strength in many ways, but it can also be a problem because it does mean that there's a larger than I'm used to percentage of people who either don't know, don't care, or at the last minute have to engage with technology that they don't understand, and they're vulnerable, and I'd like to help people make the privacy choices they want, whatever that is, whether it's like using the heck out of Google or not, all sorts of things. And Monique and I have talked about some of this stuff before, and I'd really like to see more stronger legislation around a lot of privacy stuff, and I'm unusual in Vermont in that I sued Equifax and won. And I'm very proud of that, and it's mostly because the judge didn't actually really understand what had happened, I think. But you know, in my bank error in my favor, and I did have some privacy zines. If anybody wants one, they're not mine. I didn't make them, but
Can we post a PDF of this on the website?
yeah.
Cool. All right, for people online, we will post a PDF printable on this on the
There's just
website.
like some simple things people can do if you're concerned about privacy, but you really feel, hey.
May I just ask a question? Because we just had a meeting upstairs. Do you know anything about whether we should be turning out lights or doing, anybody say anything
I
to
don't
you?
know how they're gonna close up. Do you want me to lock up upstairs?
It's probably locked. Amy left, so I'll just turn off the lights and just.
Yeah. You
I'm
might
trying to
as
draw.
well. You're not gonna affect the lights down here.
Fantastic. Yeah, and this scene, I mean, this is like basically like the six, like, I would say almost like easiest things that anybody, and if you do this, it like would make a big difference. So we'll definitely post this
Yeah,
online.
it's clicking, not programming, which is a lot of what I tell people about
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff that I do. It's
Yeah.
clicking, knowing passwords,
Yeah.
not necessarily having to get inside your engine kind of thing.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm Mike Collins. I live here in town. Over the past 20 years, I've worked for maybe a dozen companies, all pretty consumer facing. I'd like to think they're the good guys. Most recently, Slack, and I currently work at Netflix. I support a couple of vulnerable users, I would say, family members, just neighbors. I've interrupted schemes in progress, like an hour and a half into a phone call with
Oh
Microsoft. So I'm really interested in like what are we doing about that, and how are we protecting people, because it's booming.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming. That's awesome. Cool. Oh, and I forgot to thank our partners. So real quick, I'm just gonna go through that. So VPERG, Black River Innovation Campus, Vermont Creative Arts Network, ACLU Vermont, Electronic Privacy Information Center, Greater Burlington Industrial Corporation, and Grow Digital Skills. So I just want to thank them all for helping to get the word out. So.
Not IBM.
Not IBM. No, I actually have talked to IBM. It's very helpful. Okay, so what I think what we're doing next is what are we doing here? So I lined it up a little bit in that we're trying to run these different privacy bills and artificial intelligence bills, online safety bills. We're not here to pitch you any one of those bills, just to kind of try to get, like I said, more and Vermonters engaged. But also part of this, just very transparently, was we were trying to run what was basically as strong as we could make consumer protection privacy bill. And at the same time, there's also Big Tech had introduced basically what they wanted to do as a privacy bill, which it literally stripped consumers of their existing protections from the 1960s from the Vermont Consumer Protection Act. So there's a clause in there saying nothing in this law should be seen as being able to give people access to the underlying protections that you already have. And so basically these two bills were battling back and forth. And then I and others were scared that we would have to pass the industry bill. So I went to leadership and was like, can we pause I'm gonna run all over the state and try to get Vermonters' voices involved in the process, and then come back next year. And so that you're helping me with basically that promise of doing engagement with Vermonters all over the state in order to try again and not just give in to passing a bill that strips consumers of their rights. And so, yeah, I don't know if there's any other framing stuff.
No, I mean, I think, and a big part of this is understand. It's funny, like we started trying to, enact a comprehensive consumer privacy bill probably like 3 or 4 years ago. And even in that time, the landscape has changed so much. Like we have brand new concerns about like sort of government usage, like usage of data. Like we weren't even envisioning this 3 or 4 years ago. So I think part of this tour is also getting out and just understanding where people are at. And this is now the second one, and even with people's introductions, like just a couple like similar themes emerging that we're gonna hopefully like pick out a little bit, which is this government usage and how that is interacting with the kind of commercial collection of data, and how government can maybe get around classic things like warrants and needing that to access people's information. There's this thread and theme of advertising, marketing, and often one of the things that is held up against enacting any kind of sort of comprehensive consumer privacy is like, well, you're going to inhibit people's abilities to do advertising, and you need to be able to do online really behavioral targeted advertising to be able to try and reach people. And we'll explore this a little bit. That maybe is not necessarily true, but like there is this tension of how do we get the word out? Even forget about even like necessarily like advertising your business. Like how do we get the word out about like this event? And we have talked about like do we advertise on Meta? Like try to get the word out. Like and that sort of tension. This idea of like how online somebody is or isn't. And one thing I think we'll talk about too is like even if you don't think that you're that online, there's an excellent chance that you are interacting with this stuff, and you are maybe having data kind of pulled on you in ways that you may not be recognizing. So even if you feel like you like hardly touch a computer, amazingly that that may not make a difference tonight. So I noticed a lot of these different themes coming up. So I think it'll be interesting to explore some of
May
that.
I interrupt you?
Yeah,
Please,
for
by
sure,
all means,
please.
interrupt.
Yeah.
Yes.
How did you advertise this?
Yeah, so right now we basically did listservs, Front Porch Forum, asked partner groups to send it out in their emails, so they've been sending it out in newsletters and things like that. We're planning on doing Front Porch Forum statewide ads. We're trying to get those funded.
Reddit.
Huh?
Reddit.
Oh, Reddit. It was,
We had to fight with
yeah.
people being like,
Yeah, Reddit was fun. That was
so
fun.
you did you Reddit or did not?
We did, yeah. Jessamine was very helpful in getting it posted. And another thing, I guess, we changed around this agenda, so we're also doing this new again for the first time. But one thing I wanted to mention in this piece, getting started, is like we're gonna go over. We had some questions that came after the last one of like, does any of this matter? Like, can we actually help? Like, you just terrified us for an hour, but like, can we actually do anything? So I just want to assure you, like, by the end of this, we're gonna say like, yes, it does matter. Yes, we really could use your help from the whole spectrum, and I'll give you examples of ways that it actually does help your advocacy.
Or one more housekeeping, if you're
Yeah.
not used to the library, the restroom.
Yes, that's important. You should probably mention that, right?
Cool. All right, so I think we're just gonna right now turn it over to you for a little bit, and then we'll jump in with this, responding to this too. But really would love. I watched a documentary called Privacy People. It's not quite out yet. They let me peek at it, but they did a really cool exercise where they went out on the streets of a city and they just asked random people like, "What is privacy? What does it mean to you?" And there's no right or wrong answers here. It's just like anything that comes up for you. Like what even brought you here? I mean, so you shared some of that a little bit, but like personally, kind of like, what does this mean to you? I guess. Anybody can jump in.
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting for me, because honestly, I don't care about like anyone finding out my habits or things like that. It doesn't matter because it's something I share with anybody, but it's the financial aspect that like I really am worried about. And pay attention to more, I guess.
Could you share more about that?
Just like buying things online, or even like accessing my own bank account on different networks and things like that. And that's what worries me, and would have the biggest, for me personally, would have the biggest impact. Because again, I don't care that people know I go to a concert or something like that, but the other thing, like repercussions for sure. Yeah. So.
For me, I suppose it only became apparent when I couldn't delete that stuff from Facebook.
Yeah.
The ability to be forgotten is how they describe it.
Yep.
So everyone has said things online. Not necessarily that I regret the things I've said, but as my status has changed now as an immigrant, the things I've said can come back to haunt me,
Sure.
which is terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's like being blackmailed, actually, to know that those are there and someone else has control over those. They're my thoughts. I share them with my friends, but I don't own them.
That really is scary.
Yeah.
Well, I pride myself, I guess I do pride myself on not falling for things. However,
And so you're not falling for things.
I got an email from my cousin,
Oh, okay.
and I opened the email.
Yeah.
We lost our credit card.
Oh
Or
no.
I lost my credit card, because our countries are quickly to do one.
Yeah.
But I just read an email. So,
Thank you for sharing that.
it's scary. That's part of privacy. I don't like to have people know stuff that they're not entitled to.
Yeah. Sure.
And it is also the more vulnerable people that we're interacting with who
Sure.
it's like they are being tricked. They've done nothing wrong, and then not even them, us, all of us, you're left with this feeling of shame, which you shouldn't have. You didn't do anything wrong. You feel embarrassed, and then teenagers are being blackmailed into all kinds of things because they've done naive things, thinking they were talking to somebody, but it turned out not to be who they thought. It's pretty dark.
Well, and I see that stuff a lot. It's like not only do people really, they didn't do anything wrong, but like in some cases, at least for like people I've seen come to the library, they were trying to help, right? They thought someone was in a jam and they were buying a gift card for them, which sounds ridiculous to me, but only because I've heard it like 1,000 times, right? Like if you don't live in that world, you might think you had a relative who was in trouble, who whatever, and especially because of some of the parts that go into those scams, like urgency and appealing to blah blah blah, and know it has to happen now. People are often trying to help, or kids are trying to communicate, which is like we want them to, but not too much. Kind of for me, the privacy issue. I'm very sort of extremely online, and I always tell people they can bore themselves to death with my life if they want to. It is so just who cares? But like, I'm oddly touchy about like my house and my space and stuff. Like when I have friends come over, I'm like, or stay at my house or whatever, I'm like, you can take pictures or whatever, but like I'd appreciate if you turn off your location services. Like my address is on the internet, but it's different than somebody location service tagging a photograph of whatever, some fancy piece of art or something. I do not have fancy art, but like, shut up. I live up the road from you.
Just to go to your house next.
But like that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like to me, privacy is that I get to share what I choose to share, and that I have the ability to control it to the extent that it is my stuff, right? I mean, I think living in a neighborhood and living in a community, you give up a little bit of that just because you live in society, which is part of what I try to talk to like the super aggressive privacy people about. Like, that's cool, but if you want a driver's license, you're gonna have to do some things. And I had a credit card, like, just who knows what the heck happened to that credit card, right? All of a sudden, someone was spending money at Amazon Marketplace, and my credit card was really cool about it. But this was literally a week ago, but
Oh, wow.
it took a while.
Yeah.
I had to know the game, sort of.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're gonna send me that credit card in 3 weeks? That doesn't work for me. Oh, you can FedEx me one tomorrow? Thanks. Like, but it's garbage to have like inside knowledge to not have to be without a credit card for 3 weeks, right? And then like their computer, who knows what happened? Like they messed it up a couple times, making it work. And because that's not my area of like worry, but like everybody has their own and they're all fine. I was like, well, it's fine, but I would tell my friends, ooh, credit card. They'd be like, ooh, credit card. I'd be like, it's fine, I'm fine. But if somebody took a picture of the inside of my house and posted it on Instagram, I'd be like, ooh,
Right.
inside of my house. And so part of it is talking to people who don't, in the library, who don't have normative understandings of tech. Because obviously there's community norms, there's family norms, there's personal norms, there's your workplace norms. Helping them try to form them, because a lot of people who may be retired and who weren't really using them for work, weren't using tech a lot for work, they may not understand that it's okay to just keep hitting maybe later, not now. I don't want to give you my phone number. You know, there's the patterns encourage you to give away more information, and trying to help people basically fight these dragons is the interesting part of it for me, while trying to support their choices. Like, you want to have your life all over Facebook? That's a personal choice you can make. And helping somebody learn technology, in some ways, you got to keep your blank face on, because like there's lots of different ways to be a person. And sometimes I think privacy advocates, even though I am one, can be a little bit like, ugh, you're still on Instagram? And then you've lost that ability to communicate with the person.
Yeah.
I'll say something from a personal perspective, not an organizational perspective. Yeah, I mean, I think for years I've just assumed everything online is fair game. But what really has continued to freak me out is the phones and how they listen to us. And that is an area where I actually know nothing about, but I just, you know, the first time something came up on my like Google screen around something I just had a conversation about, I was like, oh, good God. And so I think that for me is like where there's real blinders and lack of control. And so, you know, anything you all can share or fix about that system
We'll get there.
would be awesome.
Can I suggest that you develop a Northern Ireland accent? I cannot understand what I say at all. I cannot make Siri do what I want.
That's not a bad thing. I think Siri talked to me in Australian, so it doesn't understand me exactly either, and that does help.
Thanks, Julie. Did you want to share anything?
I also don't really care
If
if people know where I'm eating or,
yeah.
but ownership is big to me.
Yeah.
So being
Yeah.
able to delete my data
Yeah.
or feel like I can, I think, was it GDPR? Yeah, I think they do. I don't know all the details of it, but I know in Europe you can delete your data.
You have a legal right to be forgotten.
Supposedly, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to see us maybe enact similar protections.
Cool.
And somebody was mentioning how permissive, or like you almost have to do the opposite thing to opt out of a lot of this stuff. Like the allow all cookies button is the big blue one.
Right.
Why don't we make that the red one?
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Anybody else want to, I know everybody shared, but anything anybody wanted to add before?
I
Yeah.
think the fact that education piece here, like
Yeah.
my parents are really, they think they know that they're secure on the privacy stuff, but just recently my stepdad was telling me it was similar to you. He got an email from a cousin that looked real, but it was for something that she's never done before, so it like triggered that he didn't click through it. But he said he told me he didn't click through it, but then he said, no, I clicked it, but then I closed it real quick, and I was, that doesn't matter. So like where those education pieces can happen, even to people that don't think they know everything, you know, it's hard to keep up with it all.
Yeah, for sure. Cool, so do you want to?
I just like
I'm gonna go into
yeah, because I don't want to lose like a couple of these threads, because that's when we start heading down and then we don't get back to it. But I do want to address one thing that came up here, this idea of like scams and how it kind of relates back. So there are two parts to this in my mind. There is like the personal education, which is like how to be more vigilant and how to like literally technically like not click on the wrong thing, et cetera, et cetera. But like dots that we're also trying to connect here is like going all the way back to like what makes these scams effective. And a lot of that comes back to the over collection of personal consumer data. And that may be happening even in ways that, again, like people are not recognizing, because as you're visiting different websites that have trackers, different data brokers are building profiles, behavioral profiles, which, you know, the interesting question about are our phones listening? There's some evidence that that actually is like literally happening, but often it's more they don't need to be listening because companies have developed such keen behavioral profiles of us that they didn't need to hear that you were talking about the chocolate chip cookies. They just know that they know that you want those chocolate chip cookies. Right, exactly. And then combine that with all kinds of other things about your demographic, your age, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess the point that I'm getting at though is that you know, we can't prevent all scams from happening or bad actors, but one thing that we're trying to do here with the limiting of having companies over-collect personal data and having that data fall into the wrong hands is making things like these scams less effective. So think about the example of what's sometimes called, and was referenced here, the grandparent scam, which is sometimes like a family member tries to contact another family member saying that they're in a jam somehow, et cetera, et cetera. Well, if the details of that contact are very vague, you know, it might raise red flags and the person doesn't go much further. But if they're able to include details that match the name, information, maybe like where that person was traveling, take it another level, and this is where it gets even more scary, if they're able to then replicate that person's voice via AI or something like that, that makes that scam that much more convincing, that much more effective, and that much more likely. And that all traces back to the over-collection of personal data, which is able to make these things more effective. So that's, you know, the question of scams comes up a lot, and I think that's like, even if you're not somebody who is, you know, particularly worried about like your purchasing habits or whatever, and I like totally get that, that can potentially be trained against you or someone you love at some point, and that's kind of like a scary aspect of this.
Yeah. All right, now this is the part of the program where I try to terrify all of you. And then we will go into what's been done to try to you know, address these things, and then what we're trying to do to add on to that. So a few examples of the ways that, one, I guess actually I'll start with the what is privacy piece. Like we'll go into examples of a bunch of ways that you're being tracked and all that kind of stuff without even participating in the online space. But then also it's just like, you know, an interesting thing that I've read in a lot of like privacy books or heard brought over and over, which I tend to forget, which is just like a really, I think, an important thing. And some of you hinted at this, like, we should be able to delete information. We should be able to change at any moment, like who we are as human, like how we represent ourselves to the world. So there's different, we go through our lives with different relationships and different, you know, jobs and things like that. And in each case, whether we're social circles, like in each case, think about all the times that you kind of choose what you share with all of those different groups, with different colleagues, with different friends, and how many times throughout your life, like, you might have changed your identity at some point, whether it's like, I love chocolate, now I hate chocolate, like maybe that's a little thing, but maybe, you know, maybe there are other examples of like gender identity or immigration status or anything like that where you're changing, and that should be up to you to when you disclose that, who you disclose that to, and if you did it in a digital way, like you should be able to change that or delete that. So I think that's like an interesting, just like going to the like fundamentals of what privacy is as just human beings. And another piece, like it kind of, you know, growing off of that thread is we have protections in a lot of ways, including in our Constitution, for physical privacy. Just like Justin, as you said, like where we have protections against somebody walking into your house and taking a bunch of pictures and like taking a picture of your bank statement on your table, or taking, doing a map of the layout of your furniture, or not bugging your apartment, and that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of ways, and this has been a hard thing when I'm in spaces, as part of this work over the last couple of years. I spent a lot of time in a lot of rooms with bigger corporations, whether it's government affairs people or the internal and external legal counsel for some of the biggest companies in the world. And often the debate between us ends up being like, this just happened a couple weeks ago where I was more or less surrounded with one other regulator guy, and the conversation was industry saying like, we don't understand why people keep wanting to pass privacy protections. Like, in a lot of ways, you already have discrimination laws, you already have, like, the Fourth Amendment, you already have blah, blah, blah. And I'll be like, yes, but you tell people that the digital version of all of that, kind of the digital version of discrimination, the digital version of, like, bias, that the existing laws don't apply. So you're forcing, we have to come up with new laws, because in court you'll say that the old ones don't apply. So that's generally a big issue here, is just trying to, at a fundamental level, preserve our humanity, kind of, and our dignity, and our autonomy. And so that's at a fundamental level. But coming to examples of going through this work now that I've just been hearing all the time, that people don't often think about. So, one is, I was just watching a video. It's actually on, so the resources tab on the website, we're adding just a bunch of, I'm asking for tips from privacy advocates, we're collecting tips from all of you. We're gonna put the PDF of the zine on the website, but I have a bunch of videos. And so one video in there is about car privacy. That's a whole area that I have lots of allies, fascinating people who are scaring the crap out of me all the time in car privacy now. But the number of cameras, both inside and outside of your car, and the amount of information which your cars are actually collecting on you all the time, and then sharing with your insurance company, sharing and selling to other companies, and sharing with credit reporting agencies and things like that. An example of an instance where this comes in that you might not even think about until it happens to you is on that video, that car video that's on the website. There was this guy talking about how his insurance doubled 1 month, and he didn't know why, and he reached out to a lawyer because the insurance company wasn't giving him any information about why. And so the lawyer said, you should probably go and run your credit report, your consumer credit report, which I still don't have, but it's going to be a book when I get it. I know it will. I ordered it. I asked for free from LexisNexis to give me my consumer report. But in there he said, so there's everything. It could be how likely is Monique to buy a yacht? Not very, not at all likely, just how likely is Monique to jet skiing? How likely is Monique to buy a car in the next year? How likely is Monique to like chocolate? How likely is Monique to go skiing? How likely is Monique to go and to travel to another state? How much time does Monique spend in an urban environment? How much time does Monique spend in a rural environment? Basically thousands and thousands and thousands of data points, to the point where literally they know more about us than we know about ourselves, the companies who are buying and collecting this data. And so when he got his consumer report, this guy with the insurance that doubled on his auto, he saw in the car piece of the report that he had a near collision every single day. And so he's like, what is it talking like? It's thinking he's crashing into a tree or something, almost crashing into a tree every time. And then he thought about it. He's like, my cat. So it's a very cute image. It's the cat coming out to greet him when he gets home from work at night. So it's a little kitten that runs right in front of his car, and he has to stop short before he hits the cat. So he's doing that every single day. That is being translated by the cameras and the mechanics in his car as being a near collision every single day and poor driving habits, which is then doubling his car insurance. There's lots of, around cars, there's not only is it tracking every single thing that you're doing in general, so if I regularly speed through a school zone, probably my insurance is going to say that's not a good idea. But it is also picking up there's happy to share articles on anything I'm saying right now. So people, if they want to follow up or make sure I'm sharing legit stuff, is also the habits of drivers around you. So the cars are also tracking, like if I'm on the highway, the cars in the cameras in my car are also being used to track whether or not the vehicles around me are being safe drivers, and then reporting to their insurance companies and things like that. So it's a whole, like, basically, I think that illustrates not only is what we do and the data that's being collected about us and on us all the time, like that's a concern for sure, but there's also, like, how is our data and the collection of things around us that are more or less targeted on us affecting people around us in a way that we don't even think about. So that's an example. And other examples are, like, I had a friend proofread one of my speeches for the State House on this, and she was gonna take a trip with her family, and she was going down by the Boston area, and she had read through the report, and she's like, wait a second, I'm signed up for a hotel that doesn't have human staff. Does that mean, like, how does that work? And I'm like, well, you're gonna show up, they're gonna take a biometric scan of your face, and then they're gonna let you in. They need to verify who you are and match an ID usually. So she looked into it and she called in, and that is how, so she was going to have biometric facial scans of herself, her husband, and all of her kids. And so after reading my speech, she's like, wait a second, I live in Vermont, I don't have a consumer privacy law that covers me. What are they gonna do with my face? I'm like, good question. What are they gonna do with your face? And that, like, so that's even like, if you're not online, you are in some way. Another example is like, so a lot of hotels have cameras throughout. A lot of them are using marketing software that tracks kind of like where you're going, and then sometimes might have partnerships with other business like restaurants and things like this, where they are then building a profile of like, where you're visiting in a city. And the same thing for supermarkets. So, there's examples of supermarkets that are tracking not only your face when you walk in, but then paired with your phone that's on you all the time, which might probably has a loyalty number that you're using to get discounts on your groceries as you buy groceries. But that is tracking mixed with this biometric scan, tracking you around the grocery store, and then in some cases actually, there's some stores that automatically are adjusting the prices on the shelf based on the profiles that those companies know about you. So you're smiling.
Not
Not a grocery store, yeah. Not a grocery store. Big city grocery stores. Don't be afraid to like go inside. I mean, I don't even know which brands or which stores are doing it, honestly, so I can't even say. But probably our like little corner groceries. So automatically adjusting the pricing based on your socioeconomic status, based on like any number of the things. Like I said, maybe that is where the do I like chocolate comes into play as being a factor on whether or not my cookies are going to be more expensive. I don't know. That could be a thing I could see logically built out.
Well, that's an Uber thing too. Like,
totally.
Very much.
Yes.
Dynamic pricing is
Totally.
big on those
Yes.
rideshare apps.
So Jasmine was
Uber
talking.
rideshare apps.
Yeah. So when you're
I know what Uber is, but well.
yeah. So like Uber and Lyft. So basically, if Zach and I were both to call a Lyft at the same time, or Uber, I don't know if, I guess maybe company agnostic. I don't know which ones are doing it, which ones aren't. But if we were to call the same ride-sharing service at the same time, even standing right next to each other, most likely, in most cases, yes, we're gonna receive completely different pricing because it knows Zach's socioeconomic status and knows how bad it might know how bad Zach needs a ride at the given time, and a number of different factors. How often does he ask for rides? How far away does he live from his location? Like, it all goes into the pricing. And another thing, similarly, is there's airline companies that have recently had stories out where they had announced that they were going to use dynamic pricing, so changing the pricing based on different factors to adjust their price of airline tickets. So it's like, if you, they would know again, socioeconomic status, but they also might know in a lot of cases, they're probably also using a lot of social graph information from your social medias and things, where they might know that your aunt's recently died, and so you actually really have to get on a plane and go see your aunt's. And how many times you checked for a pricing ticket. Can you afford the pricing ticket? When it comes to SNAP benefit data, like I've actually have recently been working with somebody who, through all this work, the people coming out of the woodwork who like know how all this stuff happens is interesting. So I had somebody who helped build the SNAP benefits data collection system, and also worked for one of the biggest data brokers in the world, so a company that's buying and selling people's data in mass. And so he said, he was talking about the systems he built. He wants to help now because he does not feel good about this work. But you can target, for instance, I'm not sure this was an example, but it's like close to an example of like, can I figure out mothers of newborns who are, close to the paycheck, don't have enough money this week for groceries, and can I advertise a payday loan to them? That is the kind of stuff. So it might not be that you're on Facebook, it might not be that they're on your Instagram, it might be that you're really good at email history, and like not clicking the things, but in all of these cases, like I didn't mention Facebook, I didn't mention Instagram on a lot of these. These are real world examples of just being a human traveling around the world. And so those are, I will also just add, like Zach said, a piece in here that tends to like get in the way of strong consumer protection laws is the big guys using trade associations to then scare all the small and medium-sized businesses into like, if this law passes, then the economy is going to die, all the big companies are going to leave the state of Vermont, in some cases puppies and kittens are going to die because you won't be able to target to people who want to adopt puppies and kittens, so they're going to die in the shelter. Like literally, that is an example that was used in California. But really, scaring small businesses and medium-sized businesses into like, you're not going to be able to operate anymore. And in a lot of ways, I'm going to do a whole separate series to small businesses, and I've done a webinar with a bunch of people who help consult small businesses on privacy and things like that and advertising, but largely the internet right now, advertising is broken. It's just, less than 36 cents on a dollar. This is a stat from the advertising industry, actually goes in front of humans that might actually be potential customers. The rest of it is at this point going to like fake AI sites, they're going to porn sites, they're going to child porn sites, they're going to pirated content websites. Like generally, our advertising industry is kind of a mess right now. So that's a whole other thing, but that is the piece that we like here. What else? I just said a lot, so I'm gonna stop talking for a minute. See if anybody has reactions, Ian or Zach.
Well, I will throw in, the whole, how advertising works in this is such an interesting dynamic, and if people have more thoughts, I'd be interested to hear that. But I will, in the interest of throwing in more kind of scary examples, just because Justin did mention like people coming into your home and maybe taking photos and mapping your home.
My door locked right now, though? It absolutely isn't.
But with that, a lot of people have Roombas, robot vacuums. Roombas, as part of what they do, is they are collecting information. And to be fair, to do what they need to do, to be a robot vacuum, they need to collect information, mapping your house essentially, your furniture, the layout of your home. And they are transmitting that information back to, presumably, a database. Their parent company, I think, is called iRobot, which is also the Will Smith dystopian movie. But so all of that is maybe a little creepy, but you can get your head around whatever. The robot needs that information to do its job. However, for a long time, Amazon was trying to buy iRobot and accumulate all of that data. So this is, again, that didn't go through, and it was only because European regulators stopped that Amazon from acquiring iRobot. But again, this is another way where even if you are fully aware that the robot is doing this and is accumulating this data, and you've at least consented to that for it to use that, then these secondary uses come in where Amazon presumably wanted to buy this because then they have information about like what is in your home for marketing purposes, being able to retail, oh, you have this size couch. You might be looking for a similar size couch like in the future. But now we have this database of maps of people's homes that could potentially, if there is a data breach or whatever, fall into the wrong hands. And it doesn't take much of an imagination to think about like why you wouldn't want to have some nefarious individual having a floor plan of your home, right? So these are kind of like the multiple steps of, even if you're not, and again, we talk about like, oh, if you're not going on Facebook or Instagram, you also should be allowed to go on Facebook and Instagram and not be so worried that, you know, you're just giving up all kinds of information. But I guess the point being is like, you know, especially when we talk about quote unquote the Internet of Things, so many of us, and you don't even have a choice really anymore, have smart devices, smart refrigerators, and again, these provide a lot of good benefits, but often with these things you are turning over a lot of information, a lot of data about yourself as
You made me think
part
of another one.
Oh, great.
When to me, I describe it sometimes, it's like an STD, you know, like you trust the person you're with, but do you even know like everybody they've ever been with? So like my TV, it's a smart TV, but it doesn't know the internet exists, so cool so far.
Yeah.
But like, when I was like learning about my TV, one of the things it told me was like when it's listening, which it does for various reasons, it shares the listening stuff with third parties in order to process that. So even if I trust Samsung, which I don't necessarily know who they're all doing business with or who they might get purchased by. So like even if you trust Apple, who else is Apple in bed with or you know, the Android environment or whatever. And part of it is like I watch sort of privacy advocates online try and figure out like what's the Android Apple alternative? Can you have a phone and have like a smartphone and have an alternative to either of those? And the answer is like maybe, but basically no. And the average person absolutely can't. And so trying to figure out the least harm way of dealing with it, sort of back to the STD sort of thing, is a way that sometimes it helps to explain it. Like how many people in here have smart refrigerators? We don't have them in Orange County.
Yeah, I don't think. We're in Vermont.
But I don't, like I saw the little Bluetooth thing and I was like, what is that doing?
But you're not in Orange County, right? It's really weird.
Future.
I don't know the future situation.
But how about a smart thermostat?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Or security cameras?
Yep. Well,
Or does your neighbor have a doorbell?
Well, so that is what I wanted to bring up. Is just this week there's been a bunch of articles about Ring announced that like in the past, you know, it's always recording. So like in my apartment complex, there are Ring cameras out every single window. I do, except for mine. Always recording.
And you live in Bradford, right? Or
Yeah, Bradford, yeah. That's not by my choice, but something that made headlines this week is that Ring started announcing that it will start doing facial biometric scans of every person that it picks up in its feed. So that means it is now keeping my face data without my permission, and in a lot of ways, like the GDPR and a lot of like consumer privacy laws that are being passed tend to be focusing more on biometric facial scans, fingerprints, like that kind of stuff. Lots of other ones to go down there, but generally they might give you permission to know that data is being collected and get your consent. But with like these Ring cameras now, there's no way for your neighbors to get your consent that they're scanning your face when they're pointing at your parking lot.
What about somebody who walks down the street?
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're in bed with the police.
Yeah, and then there's also a whole, I had no idea how much certain companies are sharing with the police at any given time in ICE, and that's a whole nother, we could spend hours on that alone, but yeah.
There is I don't know if maybe you already picked up on it, a couple of weeks ago in Ireland, RT, which is the national broadcaster, broadcast a documentary where they set up a company a data processing company, which allowed them to legally buy a ton of data.
Yeah.
And the documentary is basically saying Ireland needs to tighten up its laws around who's able to set up a data processing company.
Right.
Because they were able to show that with the data they bought, they could figure out down to the individual level who's working in a prison, who's working in a police station, whose children are attending this primary school.
Yeah.
And then there was a major reaction from the police unions, the prison unions, but also women's refuge organisations and domestic violence organisations saying this can be used by stalkers.
Yeah.
You already know there's everything going on the dark web
Sure.
where you can buy all kinds of nasty stuff. So if you're looking for a woman and she's disappeared because she's in a refuge, what's to stop these people going to these organisations? So I don't know if Vermont has any kind of control over who's able to set up these companies to buy the data.
So we do have data broker laws, but actually, so one piece there that we're trying to do is tighten those and adjust the definition so that more actors are actually part of the data broker laws. So the companies that are buying and selling data all the time. Part of that, as we have with this bill, there's a lot of players involved in crafting definitions of who players are that fall under laws. And so one of the laws that the policy drafts that I have is trying to tighten up the definition of what does that mean? Who actually gets captured under that definition? And then what? And now with everything that's happened this summer, and the more I'm learning about data brokers, the more I actually really want to expand that definition, because as we're talking about here, it seems like a lot more companies that we're interacting with every day, that's sharing, whether or not they're selling, they could just be sharing all our information with other entities. They should probably also be caught up in that definition so we know who they are. And we have a registry in Vermont so that if they do something bad, basically there's a registry to know who they are. And in a lot of cases, also trying to work on the ability for people to delete their data. So I have a Delete Act bill in there. So what you were saying with Facebook, trying to delete your data and it's not going anywhere, that you should be able to do that. And if you can't do that, and if a company won't let you, then you should be able to sue them. So that is not a protection we have right now. That's something that I'm personally trying to pass.
And also stalking.
Totally. So there actually is another. So I had submitted a car privacy bill, and another legislator did too. And because there are stalking provisions in Vermont, but there aren't around certain tech. And so something that I ran into was when we're talking about the cars collecting data on you all the time, we all have profile. If we have a car with Bluetooth, then we have profiles. We might actually load our contact information in there, but then also we're giving it GPS, when we're using maps and stuff like that. So in some cases, partners have been using accessing the information on the cars, even when they have divorce or something, when there's an angry spouse, and then stalking their partner. So that's a whole other bill as well. So yes, there's multiple privacy bills.
Yeah, and it's just a few people did say, I don't care who knows if I go here or there, but if you think beyond your current situation, things might change, and then you might want to get that information.
Definitely,
Yeah.
Well, there's the privilege level of I'm lucky to not have to care, but my auto insurance is well, you can save 30% on your auto insurance if you just have this app.
Right.
All the time, and I decided I didn't want to spend that money.
Yeah.
But that's easy for me because I could just, that money wasn't life and death, food, or rent. But other people, my partner, he's I think I'll just let the app spy on me because I'm in Massachusetts and I can save a lot of money on my car insurance. And everybody has to make those. But the more vulnerable you are, the more this is a real problem for you.
Well, there is a saying that I'm gonna mess this up a little bit, but basically, the poorer you are, the less privacy you have. Is essentially it's very much directly tied, because again, a lot of services too, whether if they're a free version of the service or whatever, is dependent on you using it and sacrificing a lot of your personal information being able to use it that way. But I think.
Yeah, I just have, you said sharing and selling. Does it need, are there different laws? If you are only sharing, can you get away with things that you can't if you're selling?
Yes. I mean, we're trying to adjust that. We're trying to have different levels of like being able, basically, we're one trying to capture more of that. So if you're sharing, we had instances where industry doesn't necessarily share physically, that literally might be pictures taken of data and shared, which is there's like a whole thing here where there's loopholes of like, what does selling mean? What does sharing mean? What does exchanging mean? What does using mean? Like a whole, yes, so trying to have levels for those and generally try to capture as much of the, the exchange of like data as possible.
Okay, so if you're like on a website or in a business and they say they don't sell your data, that doesn't mean they're not sharing.
Right.
it. Okay.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
good point.
And so yeah, when you see those clauses, you do want to make sure that they're explicitly saying selling, sharing, and etc. Any other thing that you want to protect. Yeah. Yeah.
Whoever they're sharing it with might be selling.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Exactly. I'm not gonna latch onto that, but I would.
And also, there are also a lot of companies that their business model is not necessarily to even sell or share your data, but to accumulate so much information about you that they then are turning around and essentially selling advertising space to other advertisers, right? So like you know, an entity like something like Meta, aka Facebook, where they benefit is not so much like collecting a bunch of your data and giving it to somebody else. They want to know all about you, so that way when they charge advertisers, they can say, we're going to target X, Y, at X, Y, and Z.
It's almost like leasing the data kind of.
Yeah, so these things start to become a little bit, complicated in that sense. But that's why like a huge thing that kind of covers a lot of this, and let's I think we have things to get to, but there are ways that we can kind of craft policy that I think make so much of these quote unquote loopholes or things like less of an issue. And I think we'll get there, but what is next? I think we have about
yeah. We're gonna try to cram through all this.
23 minutes.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna get you out on time. But you're probably gonna have to listen to me for a little bit more. And so so the what's been done piece. So I'm not gonna cover all of it, but just to set the stage for like protections people do have. So generally, 1974 Privacy Act. You might have heard about it recently because there's people at the U.S. level that want to make adjustments, but that really covers like government's use of your data. It's not the consumer, it's not like the industry kind of like consumer protection level, it's government interaction with your data. So like stuff that's been happening with SNAP benefit data and everything that's been happening at the federal level with Doge and ICE and all that kind of stuff. And so that, there are people trying to make adjustments to that. But that is really like the only, as far as Vermonters go, I'm gonna go into some like very specific use cases of privacy laws that exist, but generally we don't have a consumer protection when it comes to like data privacy for Vermonters. And so the federal one, 1974, is really all that you have as a blanket privacy bill right now. And then there's lots of, in the US, there's lots of little sectoral bills. So there's the HIPAA, so protects your health data, but not all of your health data, very specific health data, and very much only in the interactions when insurance is involved, which is something that we don't talk about enough. Like in general, we're in this Consumer Protection Act that I'm working on, we're trying to cover health data in general, and not just the entities that are HIPAA, like if an entity like a hospital is treating the HIPAA data, at like HIPAA, it's very strong protections on certain health information. Then we run into the argument of like, that everything is protected, but when it comes to HIPAA, examples of things that are not protected are like donor lists to hospitals. Like those aren't protected by HIPAA. This actually happens a lot in Vermont. Think about all of the people who don't have insurance, health insurance, including myself, and all of the different kind of like different health sectors we have, whether it's like naturopathy, like sometimes those aren't covered by insurance, or chiropractic sometimes isn't covered by insurance. None of those transactions that don't involve insurance are protected by HIPAA, technically. if you have a gift shop in a hospital, like that's not covered, that kind of gift shops exchange. Another thing is like the website. So if I have cancer and I'm going on and investigating cancer on a hospital website, and then basically the cookies, the trackers that are, you know, collecting bits of information about me all across the internet, if there's been instances where somebody was like, you know, they were fired from their job because basically trackers had, you know, built a profile in which maybe they have cancer and maybe they can't actually work their job anymore, which is actually legally protected. But it's like, it is an aspect where, like, just by going and looking there, now my profile is like, does she have cancer? Like, she was looking at a cancer website. So that's some like the HIPAA stuff, healthcare stuff. And then you've got FERPA, you've got the education stuff. But again, that is actually only data as it pertains to students in public schools, not in private schools, and it's only certain student information. It's not all of the student information. You've got Gramm-Leach-Bliley and Fair Credit Reporting Act, which is generally like the banking and insurance. And there's been lots of articles over the last couple of years about how many loopholes are in our financial and insurance privacy laws. In Vermont, we actually have a lot of state-based privacy laws, which fill in a lot of the loopholes. So that's actually an area I'm less concerned about. What else am I missing?
COMPA is the children's.
Yeah, children's.
But again, that only protects children's data, children under 13 years of age, and basically it's saying that any operator of websites that have actual knowledge of, so they have to know that they are collecting or have websites that are geared toward children, they have a responsibility to protect that data or get parental consent for like using it. But again, it only applies to kids under 13 years, years of age.
And we did pass an age-appropriate design code last year that was for kids, their data 18 and under last year. So there's like, we made a big step for kids' data last year, and we're going to continue working on the kids' data. But then as far as, I'm going to get into the like what kind of the landscape is and what can be done, is that when it comes to the consumer privacy acts across the country, like the first one was California, and it was very much more of a voter effort than like a legislative effort that was forced on everybody. And the thing that happened there is California passed the law, and generally industry was like, oh, we can't have the whole country passing a copy of this. This is not good for us. And so what happened was a kind of like industry bill was introduced in Washington State. And that failed actually, I think 3 times, and it continues to fail. But after failing a number of times, they basically brought this bill that is full of loopholes that they're okay with and introduced it in Virginia. And Virginia passed a copy of that. And the idea of this industry bill versus California is how many people live in California and are protected under the California one that they don't like, that is consumer protective. And then it's basically a race of like how many states can industry have pass a copy of what they like across the other states. So we've got 17 bills at this point that have like passed a copy of what industry likes. And then the first time it was interrupted is actually, it went into effect October 1st of this year, which was Maryland. And so Maryland started to close some of the loopholes. It also introduced kind of more, and not introduced, but it like built upon this concept of data minimization, which is basically having companies collect the minimum amount of information they need to provide a service that the consumer is asking them for. That's really all it is. And so there's different levels of, how much you're asking them to how minimal you want the information to be. But in general, Maryland is like very strong. And so at the same time, basically Vermont is working on there's both versions. So we have industry bill, which also has a clause in it saying stripping people from their rights of the 1960s. Just want to add that in there. And then you've got the other version that is closer to like a Maryland. And then Maine is trying to pass, basically, and what's happening in each of these states is there is a war between kind of a strong consumer protective one and then the industry-friendly loophole one. And so they're at odds with each other in Massachusetts and Maine and New York and Washington State and I don't even remember who is battling with this. We're all battling with this right now, working with a bunch of legislators across the country. So what can be done is basically like, we want to pass a strong consumer privacy bill. We want to pass a car privacy, anti-stalking type of digital bill. We want to pass stronger kids protections. We want to pass, I don't even know what else we're, data delete act. We want to have people have the ability to go online and delete their information. We're working on Daniel's Law, which is like having public officials and judges and cops and human rights workers and all kinds of stuff, like people who are in positions that are at risk for high risk for retaliation from people that they're working with, and so trying to make it so they can remove like their home addresses from the internet. So anyways, that's generally like, we're trying to pass all of these at the same time that there is a war. So what you can do to help is, one, like I said, I am totally welcome to have people who, as far as the laws I'm on, where like, I don't like your law, it's stupid, but what I want to hear is like, it's stupid because of this, or like, I want to see you change this. Or so if like businesses or individuals are concerned with different pieces of any of the bills, like I want to hear from people. I also want to hear from people because I want to on that case, I want to make changes. And I am talking to people from all across the world at this point that are experts in any one of these topics, and then also talking to industry folks who don't want it as, might say it's too strict to operate. And that's fine. Like I want to hear that. And I'm actually working with a bunch of people in industry who are willing to actually have a conversation, because that's the hardest part, is like, you'll have in the State House, we'll hear like, this bill is gonna kill the internet, and you're like, great, but show me where in the bill we're gonna kill the internet. And they're like, we're just not gonna let you pass this, like, it's gonna kill the internet. Like, can we have a conversation? No. Okay, great.
Well, California's got super strong enough laws.
Yeah. Right.
Those people didn't go out of business. In fact, I
Exactly.
hear California's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
From a business perspective.
Yeah. There's a few companies there. And so, but as far as the help piece is like, one, I'm gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna share or sell your, the information from the registrations, but I would like to like send people updates of like, here are ways that you can engage, or here's more listening sessions we're doing. And if you want to be removed, you can let me know. But, in general, just giving people opportunities, because in Vermont, like in most states, from talking to people who are working all across, in state houses all across the country, it generally takes like 3 to 5 people of the public reaching out to a legislator to say like, I hate this, stop it, or I love this, pass it, or I want to talk about this. Like 3 to 5 people. If I get that on like most bills, people, they just don't engage, and they don't have time, and accessibility wise, or they just are trusting me as their rep, and that's totally fine. But in cases where if I get 3 or 5 emails about an issue, I'm like, oh crap, like I actually gotta pay attention to this, like people don't like this. It's not that many people. And it's not that many people even in a more populated state, honestly. So really would just love to, like, if anybody wants to have coffee after this, happy to do those chats, happy to go to more libraries and have these conversations. Happy to have people testify, happy to sit down with people who want to say like, I hate this provision, you got to take it out, and we'll debate that. And then it's like, great for me. But yeah, so really any, what am I missing? Sign up for VPERG. I don't want to push people, but on like, if you are interested in learning more about this in an ongoing way, like there are groups like ACLU is a partner on this. Electronic Privacy Information Center, VPERG, Consumer Reports, they all have like advocacy signups where you can go and sign up and say like, I want alerts about privacy bills, or I want alerts about whatever bills. So those are things. I want to make sure that like, as far as what you can do today on things, like I know on the website we're like, we'll give you all these tips. As soon as we started doing that, like in the last one, we could have been there for 4 hours. So I'm generally loading those resources to the website, and we have these privacy zines, which I'm going to start taking to all our events now. But I think like generally what I want to say on like what can you do today as far as your own privacy is like, I think we've kind of covered it in a way that it's like, in the moments where you're getting something for free, where you're walking into a space that has cameras, where you're signing a contract for a car, all that kind of stuff, your insurance went up. Like, I think leaving this room, I know like in my case, when I have these examples, when I'm in those situations now, I'm like, wait a second, like, did I sign away my privacy rights? Can I protect myself? Is there a paper I can sign that doesn't waive my privacy rights for like buying cars? There is a secret privacy policy most people don't know about. You can just ask for when you buy a car and say, I opt out of your privacy sharing. The same friend who got scared about the biometric at the hotel, she bought a car shortly after our experience together too, and she's like, I demanded a privacy policy from the manager and I opted out. So like, I think just like coming away with this and just questioning like, how am I being interacted with in ways that I don't even think about, and having these conversations with other people, because I think in general we are all affected by this, whether or not we know it. And I think the more that the public can like talk about it and get engaged and speak up about it, write letters to the editor about like, what am I giving up? Any kind of way that you want to engage. I just encourage that. I think I already answered the next one that I was gonna go. Okay, I'm gonna just open it up. Or did I miss? Or what do people want to say?
Not so much miss, but so I think a good follow-up to that. So everything that Monique just said, absolutely true. You know, people should do the things in this zine. We had a lot of discussion tonight about like different ways that people can kind of be aware and make changes. And then we also had some discussions about like, well, what is the difference between sharing and selling data? We've had, discussions about, what are you consenting? What are you potentially giving up? And all of that is because right now, the way that we deal with consumer data privacy, definitely in this country, but still to a very large degree globally, is this very kind of combination of opt-in, opt-out manner, which is to say consumers are frequently having to either make decisions or ask for privacy policies or ask for this kind of stuff. And what I want to introduce to you, and what we are trying to do through policy, is introduce a completely different way of thinking about this, which is to switch to privacy by default. And this is where this concept that Monique just mentioned of data minimization comes in. Instead of putting the onus on the consumer to become these quasi-privacy experts and attend meetings like this, which, we should still do that. That's all fantastic. Put the onus on the would-be data collector to limit the data that they are collecting on us to only that which is necessary to deliver the good or service that they are doing. And then once they have that data, to only use and process it in a way that is necessary to deliver the good and service. So instead of requiring all of us to become privacy experts and make decisions about, well, am I willing to use this because I need to be able to get directions, I need to be able to navigate through life, put that on the person who is deciding to try and collect that data, and put the responsibility on them to limit the information that they are collecting only to that which is necessary. So that is a concept that I want us to really kind of take from this, and is one of the central debates that come up in these privacy policy debates, for sure.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Something that's been haunting me for the last week, which I heard about on Wait, Don't
Oh no.
Sure, I didn't know about consumer credit reports, by the way.
Yeah.
Whoa. Sure.
Yeah, so I'll post a link actually to the resources, because like I said, I downloaded mine. I'm still waiting for it in the mail, but it's gonna be like a book.
Yeah. I'm sure that we all knew I listened to that program. Is these free televisions?
Yeah.
Did you know about
No.
So it's like $1,000 television, and you can get it for free, but you have to consent to having an advertisement playing at all times in the corner, and even when the television is off. If you don't use the TV a certain amount of time, you are charged for it. And just what you said, Zach, really struck me of like the people, we are all impacted, but folks living in poverty are impacted the most. And so I think about not just the privacy, but like the impacts of that on the screen all the time and sort of like the bandwidth overload on your brain and the physiological impacts of that always being in your house. And is your bill gonna fix that, Monique?
So yeah, I mean,
Stop that from happening.
that's fascinating. I don't know if we like fix the like trading and ad like or that. Because like if that person is consenting, they're probably told. I'm curious if they're in most smart TVs, if not all of them, there are cameras that are like also able to record, which is why you were saying you don't connect it to the internet. And when I go to a hotel, I unplug the smart TVs. So like I'm curious, like, is that part of like why they want people to have them on? Like, I just don't. I'm just like so curious about the extent to which they're.
They didn't go in deep on wait, don't tell me this.
Yeah. Because then in our.
Is it a real product or is it a push-pull for a thing that they're thinking about building? You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I certainly believe it is a potentially real product.
You're gonna look it up.
There's no Wi-Fi password.
That's okay.
But one thing I will say about that, while there might not be something in the bill that like directly like outlaws that specifically or whatever, but what like this concept of de-anonymization like gets at is, at the end of the day, maybe removing the incentive for companies to collect all manner of.
Well, are you ordering a free TV for
There you
Jessica?
go.
Right? I'll tell you.
We found it. It's in pre-order right now, so it exists conceptually.
Right.
And
But
we would like
if
it. Sorry.
No, you're totally fine. But if we remove this incentive to collect all kinds of data, now that might mean that we are changing in some ways, services now that we kind of take for granted as being free or whatever. You might see some changes in terms of the dynamic, but there are invisible costs associated with that we're all kind of paying right now. So in some ways, what we're talking about with some of the policies is changing that so people actually have a better understanding of what they are potentially giving up and can make that and are more empowered, and at the end of the day, as long as if you understand what you're giving up, people can be free to make that choice. But I think part of the problem now is it is all so hidden. I mean, we just went over tons of examples of how we are all giving up information that we might not even be realizing or consenting to. So I think it's changing that incentive structure to just accumulate so much information about all of us.
Well, and big tech has a vested interest in you not understanding it.
Of course.
For sure. Yeah.
And they're richer than us.
Yeah.
So they have more resources so they can.
Yeah.
This is a huge question, so
That's fine.
just like you can barely answer it. You're speaking so much of states, like this is totally on the states. I know the world is totally different this year than it was last, but this isn't new to either of you. So will there ever be will our federal government step into this?
So that's actually I went on a tangent before I finished my thought about basically that war between the industry bill and the the stronger consumer protection bills that's going on right now. The whole point of the industry bill kind of being introduced to try to get in as many states as possible was to exceed the population of California. Have the number of Americans that were covered by the industry bill exceed the population of California. So then the lobbyists of big tech can go to the Capitol Hill and say, look, more Americans prefer our consumer protection bill than the one that's passed in California. So that's why we're in a war right now. So hopefully, although I'm a little bit scared about right now us passing a federal bill because I can only imagine the lobbying that is happening on privacy bills in each state is millions of dollars. As far as the battle we're seeing on consumer protection bills, anecdotally, so think that this was my second year in the state house, and people who had been there for 40 years are I've never seen as an intense lobbying effort ever on any single bill in the history of me being in this building. That, so, and think about I think it was, well, I'm not going to say it out loud, but there's a trade association, we'll just say, at Capitol Hill that last I knew, people had told me there's 1,200 lobbyists for like that entity that is generally the same one like fighting us. And in general, I pulled the like lobbying database for the state, and there's more lobbyists on these bills than there are like reps in the building. So it's that I'm concerned about a federal bill passing because of the amounts of it'll have to be tweaked basically. Yeah.
Well, and it's a really great question. So there recently have been a couple different attempts. There's the American Data Privacy Act, things that have gotten introduced at the federal level that are the equivalent of what some states have passed in terms of being a comprehensive consumer data privacy law. And depending on where in the process you looked at that bill, there's certain iterations of it that are actually quite strong and quite good. It did not. We're not hiding the lead here. This did not get enacted. We do not have a federal American Data Privacy Act, and anybody who's following along, it's very difficult to get things passed in Congress right now, regardless, right? So, I mean, we have a federal government shutdown. So, that being said, so it falls to the states for two reasons. One, the federal government isn't enacting this, so then it's up to the states to do something. But the other thing I guess I would, and Monique was just alluding to this, but I would say, we want to see the strongest possible rule here in Vermont, A, to just best protect Vermonters, but B, when there comes a day, and it would be beneficial to have a federal American Data Privacy Act. Like, I actually am sympathetic to the concept, especially companies that operate in different states, like, that they don't want a quote unquote patchwork of states that they're complying with. If Vermont has enacted something strong, or any other state, we're at least establishing a baseline. So then when those debates do end up happening at the federal level, you can point and say, well, they're not going to want to give up or cede those rights. And then you get into questions of, does that hypothetical federal law have language in it that then supersedes Vermont, or do you fight to say, like, all right, we're going to establish a federal baseline of protections, but states can go further if they want, and that sort of thing. So you start to get into those questions, but at the end of the day, it comes back to, it behooves Vermont to have as strong as a consumer data privacy law as possible. And it's an example of like where us doing this could have positive impacts for other people, just by the fact of like, we can point to this law and say that this is a law with strong protections and it's doing good things in the state.
Yeah, one more thing on that too. We don't need to let you guys go, but sometimes when we get into this discussion, the question is, well, like, does anything that Vermont actually does matter? What can states actually do as far as, a broader scale? Two things on that. One, we all copy each other all the time. So yes, like with the age-appropriate design code Vermont passed last year, a bunch of states have reached out to me. I've had calls with them. They're running copies of it. Like, they're going to introduce copies of our bill. But also thinking about like My Health, My Data is a privacy bill that's just around health data, trying to close the HIPAA gaps that Washington State passed. And, there was a moment when that went into effect where I noticed just anecdotally, a bunch of big tech companies that were like, we're going to start protecting your health data in a more protective way. We're the good guys, blah, 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 blah. They didn't tell anybody that like a new health law with a private right of action, the right for individuals to sue, went into effect that same week. Like, they weren't doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing it because Washington State passed a bill that then forced them to be stronger, which means they actually really have to start protecting everybody because, again, they're collecting so much information, they don't even know what they have, so they have to cover all their bases.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like both environmental protection.
Totally, yeah.
And then also like food protection.
For sure.
Stuff like that. Yeah. We're just, that's much older, so.
But it's very many correlations as far as like the same fight, the same lobbying and that kind of stuff too, because it does end up protecting more people.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this, and like I said, we'll keep in touch if you want to attend more sessions or if you want to share information around. I have a bunch of resources to load to the website, but please also just feel free. Like, I think both of us are easy to find, and like especially my legislative email and VPERG's website for Zach, but I spend most of every single day right now of every day of the year on these bills. And so most of that is traveling all over the country and all over Vermont, having coffee with people and just talking through this stuff. So would love if you have questions, if you want to help if you want to fight about it. All of it is great. So thank
Can
you.
you link to your ongoing legislation from the resources page?
Yeah, sure,
That
sure.
would be
Yeah, I can do
super
that.
helpful, because,
Okay.
yeah, the
Yeah.
legislative website.
I'll do both so that we're so we cover the basis of like
Friendly.
yeah. Cool. Thank you everybody.